the whole job 10 times harder than it would have been otherwise.
Do you wear a special suit or anything?
Indeed we do, yes.
What's the attire that you turn up in then?
Well, I don't turn up in it because it's a little bit hot to be driving around in the van and it on, but we wear a beekeeper suit when necessary, which is most of the time. These days we can treat most wasp nests, even the ones that are high up on houses, without using ladders. We use extension lances and so on. So normally for a professional with the right equipment, a wasp nest can be a fairly simple, straightforward job. It just gets overly complicated if the householder's had a do-it-yourself attempt and failed in the process.
What do you actually pump into the nest then? It's some sort of white powder, isn't it? What is it then?
Well, in actual fact, the powder that you refer to, it's chemically identical to talcum powder, and it contains an insecticide. All it needs to do is coat it onto the bodies of a few of the wasps, and as they return into the nest, they pass it around the colony, and within an hour the whole colony is dead.
What about those that survive, though? I mean, can they go on the offensive? Can they start dive bombing?
Oh, yes. Treating a wasp nest, certainly later in the summer, is an incredibly dramatic event. Literally within 5 seconds of treating the nest, they're out and they're trying to defend the nest. And certainly, if you're out there without protective clothing, you can sustain a massive number of stings very, very quickly indeed.
What about those that do survive and fly off? I mean, do they rally the neighbours from the neighbouring nests, or is that just a bit of a miss?
That's just a bit of a miss, and none of the wasps will survive the treatment. All of them, they are biologically programmed to re-enter that nest, and as soon as they do so, they pick up a lethal dose. Literally within an hour of the treatment, the whole colony is finished.
At the risk of yet again scratching here, I have to ask you one problem that just away from wasp. Bed bugs you're being called out to at the moment, aren't you?
Well, bed bugs are the big success story of this decade. For most of the latter part of the 20th century, we had them really under control. They were virtually eradicated. In the USA, they were thought even to be extinct. But they've come back, and they've come back with a vengeance. And now I can tell you some very posh establishments are fighting a losing battle with them.
Big? Are they big? What, you know, can you see when you get into your bed? Maybe, obviously we're probably talking about places where you would stay, maybe go on your holidays. When you get into the bed, can you see them? You
can indeed, although people often confuse them with dust mites, which are not visible to the naked eye. A bed bug it's about the size of a ladybird, but very much flattened. But the thing which you normally see, rather than the bed bug itself, because that only comes out in the very, very early hours of the morning when you're probably asleep, is that the fecal remains, the stains of blood that they've taken from you on the bedding.
There's a saying that you're never more than a few feet away from a rat. Is that true?
Again, it's another one of these urban myths, mainly because the rats live in the sewerage system, and of course you're never more than a few feet away from the sewerage system. But again, it's a fact that the rat population in Britain at the moment is probably at the highest it's ever been.
Again, TV, I mean, programmes very popular on TV when we look at, you know, people like you dealing with all these pests and things. We like to watch, don't we? There's somehow there's an interest there.
There is a fascination with pest control, and sometimes it does get a little boring for us when people tell us about the wasp nest they had in 1974, when we've seen and heard it 100 times, of course. But the one thing about those programs, when you see them, there is one sense that they cannot bring over to you, and that is the smell when you enter one of those houses. It is absolutely indescribable.
What's the worst job you've ever had to do?
It was a repossessed house in the Midlands, and they called me in because basically I'll tackle anything, and their own people wouldn't. And the guy who lived in there had several Rottweilers, several snakes and other assorted creatures, and he never let the dogs out of the house for any purpose whatsoever. The excretia was in places 18 inches thick all over the house.
Is there anything that puts you off, or...?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
How did you get into the job? What made you decide, I want to have a crack at this?
It's a question I've been trying to answer myself for nearly 30 years. I joined a very well-known pest control company as a fresh-faced graduate with a degree in history in 1980, mainly intending to use it as a stopgap until I decided what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I'm kind of still thinking.
Is it changed, or has it changed over the years?
Oh, very, very much so. We've become very much more health and safety conscious than we ever used to be back in the 1980s. And of course, the big progress, although most of us would not call it progress, is the range of insecticides and pesticides that we have available to us is vastly reduced from what it was. Some of us might say to the point where it's really making some aspects of our job virtually impossible.
Ken, wonderful to chat to you. Come back to us soon. We'll do a phone in very soon, I think, because there'll be people out there who want to ask you all sorts of questions. You can take your wasp's nest with you, including the ones that are living as well. I think I've been very brave sat here with that wasp's nest this afternoon. News at 2 on the